feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some
I
soccer.
don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule.
Welcome back, everybody, to another installment of the Sports Experience Podcast. It's Dom and Chris here once again, and recording live here from Engle Studio, and they're here for all of your audio needs.
Yeah, that's right. That's where we always been recording since the very beginning. Quick shout out to Ty, who is our producer. He said keep it quick, so I'm going to try and go as long as I can with this. Who are we talking about today? We're a couple of comics who love sports. We're back on the diamond.
Back on the diamond, and hey, when you get a chance, hit that subscribe button on our YouTube and follow us on all our socials. It's a good decision, and it will really help us out, so thank you.
Like, comment, and subscribe, please.
That's right. Back on the diamond with one of the biggest what-ifs in basically 1990s baseball.
Well, I feel like this is the, one of those cautionary tales that franchises take and they're just like, no, we're going to arrest you for half of the season. Like, it is very much of a guy who got overplayed.
We are headed back in the DeLorean where pitch counts don't matter, and we are talking about all-star pitcher Steve Avery.
Yeah, Steve Avery of the Atlanta Braves.
That's right. Stephen Thomas Avery, born April 14th, 1970 in Trenton, Michigan. His dad, Ken, was a former minor league pitcher.
Yeah.
He went to Michigan State, basically Steve's own pitching coach growing up. Played for a couple of years for the Detroit Tigers, and then married his mom, Connie, and got more into being a dad and family man.
Well, I imagine he probably coached them all throughout Little League and all, that whole thing. And when he was growing up, and he pretty much probably, like you said, his first pitching coach.
Yeah, his dad eventually became an athletic director for 3 high schools in the Taylor, Michigan area where Steve grew up. Had 2 older brothers and a younger sister, and very sports obsessed as a kid. Very sports obsessed. He was very competitive. Read in an article, his nickname as a kid was Kanga. He would challenge as an 8-year-old all of the kids in the neighborhood to foot races, and he would give them almost a head start or an advantage. He would hop the entire way. So did not like to lose either. When he was 6, he apparently cried when his dad bought him a baseball glove. He wanted a soccer ball, oddly enough.
I thought that one was really funny, especially because his dad played baseball. It was one of those things where it was just one of those funny ones.
But as he gets older, because entering high school, he was only 5'2" and 89 pounds, at about 12 years old. But he grows into this behemoth of a pitcher.
Well, he just didn't hit puberty until later. So
late bloomer.
He hits it. I think he hits it around junior year because that's when he starts to just become,
Yeah, he's about
fully developed.
6'4", 180. But in high school as a junior, by that point, opposing batters were applauding if any of their teammates made contact off of him. And Steve was kind of a power pitcher in high school, definitely threw smoke, but a 3-pitch pitcher. He threw a fastball, he had a curveball, and a devastating changeup.
I was going to ask you about that because coming out of high school as this kind of prospect, he really only had those 3 pitches. And
Nolan Ryan only needed 3 pitches.
I was just going to say, he dominated with them.
While in high school, he also played basketball and ran cross country. But by his senior year, you could definitely tell that he was going to go the baseball route.
Yep.
His dad said in a Connie Mack League game when he threw at 92 miles an hour, there might be something special with him. As a senior, he went 13-0. Team won the state title and MVP of a tournament. 196 strikeouts, a .51 ERA in 88 innings. But here's the other thing about Steve. He could hit too. As a kid, he would practice hitting wiffle balls over his house, and when they all collected on the backyard, he'd hit them back into the front yard. He hit .511 with 8 homers and 44 RBIs.
I thought that you could just see he was a baseball player. You know what I mean? Where some of these guys, he would have made it in the 1900s as one of those, pitchers that would hit and just, all of that, where he just, really was a great prospect for baseball. And, I mean,
yeah.
there you go.
So He had already, after high school, Stanford offered him a scholarship to go and play there, which is a good move for him. I think they were just coming off a national title at the NCAA level in baseball.
Okay.
But in Major League Baseball, you don't have to go to college, Chris. And especially if you are picked very high and get a lot of signing bonus money, you don't have to go to college.
And this is something that I have to say about Major League Baseball as opposed to everybody else, is they definitely have their own farm system, which the NFL's farm system is college football.
Student athletes.
NBA is, you know what I mean? So baseball literally has this set up for him to be like, we see you're going to be a dominant pitcher, come in and we'll teach you.
Yeah, exactly. And so
and pay you money.
Money for your labor, Chris. What a novel concept.
Yeah, real money.
Turn that change into folding money. So the question isn't if he'll get drafted like we talked about in our Frank Thomas episode. It's how high will he get drafted?
Well, I was wondering about this with his dad's influence, with his dad coming from playing like a couple of years and playing in the minors forever, where I wonder if his dad was just like, oh, no, if you get drafted in the first round, we're going to take it because you're literally setting up to be one of like a starting pitcher at one of these franchises.
And two of the top three teams who are drafting that year need pitchers. Picking first, as they often do, are the San Diego Padres. They decide to go the college route with Andy Bennis, who once led the NL in strikeout. He was a good pitcher for a long time.
Yes.
It was, a smart move by them. The Indians take Mark Lewis because they're in the dog days of the Lou Brown era. And the Braves are picking third because the 80s were not kind to the Atlanta Braves. They were straight trash at this point.
But we see that they built this group
They're
of
building
pitchers.
these group. The previous seasons, they had traded for John Smoltz. They had drafted Tommy Glavine in the second round and a mess of other great players. Bobby Cox is now their GM. He hasn't become the manager yet, but he's the one actually picking the players, and he is a Hall of Fame manager. So.
And to all these other pitchers that you might, when you hear them, you might be more familiar with, Steve was literally looked at as like, this is going to be our guy.
This is our ace.
Yes.
This is our ace. This left-handed fireballer out of Michigan. And he was picked third by the Braves.
Yep.
Scott Boras was his agent. This is when Scott Boras was first starting to be a baseball agent and basically holding teams hostage for players. Here's some other guys that were taken that year. This draft was pretty stacked. You had Jim Abbott, who we talked about on the podcast.
American hero.
Tino Martinez, Charles Nagy, Brian Jordan, Marquise Grissom, Luis Gonzalez, Jim Edmonds, Kenny Lofton, a basketball player at the U of A, and in the 62nd round, Mike Piazza.
I'll tell you what, it's interesting because those are the guys that you hear in the 90s of baseball.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like
exactly.
That's a great little draft. Mike Piazza, God, how'd you ever make it?
The 62nd round is a favor. That was such a Guido favor that turned out like gold.
Oh my God, it might be the greatest favor ever. It's just like, look, it's my uncle's kid. He needs just a spot out there. I know his hair is weird. Just let him go.
He likes heavy metal and has a mullet. Let's just put him behind the dish. He's never played there before, but let's see if it works out.
Can he swing the bat? Can he?
Steve actually signs a then record, which only lasted 5 days, $211,000 just signing bonus, just for signing with the Braves. So, you know what? As attractive as a Stanford degree is and having to play at least 3 years, he made the right call.
I mean, I imagine he dwarfed what his dad made his entire professional career.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Just on the signing bonus.
Just
That's
on
the
the
thing
signing
that's
bonus.
so crazy about just shit like this, where you look at the contracts nowadays and they're just like, oh my God.
I know.
But even back then, like I bet 200,000, they were like ecstatic. You know?
Oh, yeah, stoked about it. 1988, he's in Pulaski, Virginia, living with a homestay family called the Huffords. There was a good story about how him and Turk Wendell, who also pitched in the majors, they had a little bit of a mishap going four-wheeling, and they came in into the house all muddy. They walked miles back to where they were staying, and in the next morning there was a mop and bucket that just said, "Please clean up after yourselves."
Well, it's minor leaguers being minor leaguers.
Yeah,
you
minor
know?
leaguers being minor leaguers. His first game, though, you can tell this kid is pretty special. 5 innings, 4 hits, 7 strikeouts, and a walk. The team wins 5-0, and his manager, Cloyd Boyer, who was a former Major League player, baseball lifer, said, "I can see why they drafted him number 1. He's definitely a big league prospect." And just that season, he makes the All-Star team, goes 7-1, has a 1.50 ERA, and 80 strikeouts in only 66 innings. So he's just already dominating people his age.
I was going to say, it's already apparent that he could probably pitch in the big leagues. Like, he is really dominating this minor league as soon as he come in. There's no like learning curve.
No, and I'll get into this once he gets to AAA and who his manager was, or his pitching coach was, and what a part he played in his career. But in '89, he starts with the Durham Bulls because ground balls are more democratic, Chris.
That's very right. It's very true.
He doesn't stay with them for very long, but this roster had 10 players who eventually made it to the major leagues, 9 of whom were pitchers. So this is where all the Braves, like, awesome pitching of the freaking 90s is coming from.
Can I tell you a little baseball folklore? They say that there was a older woman who lived out there.
There was an older woman.
In that time, and she schooled these young boys in the ways of baseball and sex.
I was going to say love, but love and sex, same thing.
That's a fine. You know what? That's all good. And you know what? 9 pitchers, that was her specialty.
So he starts the year with the Bulls, goes 6-4 with a 1.45 ERA and 90 strikeouts, but he's so good that he's promoted halfway through the season to Double-A Greenville, and he's 19 years old. He's 19, and he locks 13 starts for him. These are grown-ass men on the doorstep of Major League Baseball.
And he really, like, that was the thing about that I saw that, I mean, kind of might hurt him later, is he really skyrockets through the minors. It's very much apparent every single team he gets on, he's just like, oh, no, this guy's
best pitcher.
Yeah, this guy's the best pitcher, and he does not have a lot to learn at this level.
Well, and you would figure the reasoning the Padres took Bennis was, he's MLB ready.
Yes.
Like, he made his Major League debut down the stretch in '89 when they were fighting for the NL West title, but Avery, you thought, would take a little bit longer just because of his... Nope, he's right there.
Just because of his age.
Yeah, just because of his age and development. And 1990, though, he's in AAA Richmond, where his pitching coach is Leo Mazzoni. Do you know who that is?
No.
So eventually he becomes pitching coach of the Braves when Bobby Cox becomes the manager, but he was always the guy with the mustache always rocking in the dugout.
Yeah,
That's Leo Mazzoni. Yeah.
Sure.
So he said, and we had talked about this with his dad growing up. He said, I didn't teach Avery a pitch. He had them. So my job was to see that he kept them. Yeah. That was, when you have 3 great pitches, that's all you need.
Yeah.
He said he trusted himself to change speeds unlike any young pitcher that he had seen before, because a lot of guys who come, from being just power pitchers and dominating over people that they're way better than, they don't have that confidence to be like, I can throw a breaking ball right now for a strike, like, especially when I need to. So,
well, I imagine that's something that comes with time, or for Avery was just like something he just already knew.
Yeah.
Watching his dad play baseball and pitch his whole life, I imagine he was very in tune to what it was that a pitcher needed to do.
Oh, absolutely. And, well, he does so well that on June 13th, 1990, he's called up to the big leagues. He's barely over 20 years old. He's the youngest player in the National League at that time. And he gets to go up in a game against the first place Cincinnati Reds, and a team that would eventually win the World Series that did not find themselves out of first place the entire season. It's funny, there was a story about how when he got to the team hotel, he left his bags in the car. When he came down to Atlanta, they spot him a 2-run lead in his first start, but then the wheels kind of fall off against that lineup of Larkin and Davis and everybody.
Yeah, I was going to say they kind of shell him. But, I mean, it's his first start. He's,
Yeah, no, he's 20 years old. He's barely got fur on his peaches.
Yep.
But something very important happens 3 days later, because on June 16th, 1990, Bobby Cox leaves the GM spot, which was eventually filled by John Sherholes, to become the manager, and he brings Mazzoni from AAA to be his big league pitching coach.
So it's set up for Avery to be this guy essentially in this next season.
Well, not only Avery, but guys like Smoltz and Glavin too. He finished the season 3-11 with a 5.64 ERA in 20 starts, but he did have, on August 24th, a complete game shutout against the Cubs and Greg Maddux. Avery got 2 hits in that game, too. Maddux got all the Braves pitchers of this era could hit, which makes so much sense for that Chicks Dig the Long Ball Nike campaign. Hi, Mark. So heading into 91, the Braves obviously finished last this year.
I was going to say they didn't have a good team whatsoever, but they had this young pitching staff that got this kind of sexy name.
They would call them Young Guns.
They called them the Young Guns. I called them the Young Buns.
Oh, and Avery was Emilio Estevez.
Oh, yeah, I do.
Because he's Billy the Kid. He's younger than ever. But they called him that because all of their starters, nobody outside of Charlie Leibrandt, they had 4 guys who were 25 and under.
Yeah.
Like Maddux and Smoltz, or not Maddux and Smoltz, Smoltz and Glavin are like geriatric at that point. But an amazing season that year for the Braves and Avery, 1991. Kind of coming out of nowhere.
Well, essentially going from last to second.
We'll bring
just
up
to
that
rub
second.
it in a little bit. But you're right. He becomes not just like a good pitcher. This is the thing that I feel like everybody was expecting was like, all right, this next year he might go, 9-12 or whatever it is.
He'll finish around 500 and he'll look like a 21-year-old ready to dominate the league.
And he proceeds to be one of the best pitchers. I mean,
in baseball this year.
Yeah, it's hard to even deny it because they really have this great pitching staff that all steps up.
Yeah, I mean, every guy is your losing streak breaker, basically, in this rotation. This year he goes 18-8, 3.38 ERA, 35 starts, 3 complete games, 210.1 innings pitched. Keep those in mind, those numbers there. 137 strikeouts, and he's 21. And he's pitching in super important games. Like in September, he had 2 complete game wins over the Dodgers, who were fighting him all year for the NL West. And then on September 1st and on September 15th, he grabbed his last, on September 20th, he grabbed his last win of the season, taking a no-hitter into the 7th against the Astros.
Oh, yes.
So it comes down to the final 2 days of the season. The Braves win the division. They're worst to first, and they're going to the World Series against another worst to first team we've talked about on this podcast, the Minnesota Twins and Kirby Puckett. And Avery doesn't record a decision in either game because they're all close and probably one of the most exciting World Series in Major League Baseball history where the home team wins every time.
But this is something that I saw where he had a couple of solid games, but they were 2 decisions.
I'm sorry. I totally skipped over the NLCS.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. Because this is
where
where
they play
he
the
earns
Pirates.
his big money.
Yeah.
I skipped ahead, but, well, let's just say he's the best player on both teams in this series, and because he's the MVP.
Yes.
So they lose Game 1 to the Pirates. In Game 2, he goes 8 1/3, 9 strikeouts on 118 pitches. Zane Smith pitched well for Pittsburgh in this game, but he completely shut them down. I think in this game, he retired 11 in a row at one point. He was making Barry Bonds look ridiculous. Basically, this whole series, everyone made Bonds look ridiculous. But
and then he comes back in Game 5.
Yeah. Or no,
Game 6?
Game 6.
Okay, so he comes back in Game 6, so he's...
So they win 1-0 Game 2.
Yep.
They get a weird run on a bad hop over Steve Buechele. They're down 3-2, so this is an elimination game for them in Pittsburgh at Three Rivers Stadium. Doug Drabek is pitching for the Pirates. I think he won the Cy Young that year or the year after. So Avery matches him pitch for pitch. 8 innings again, 8 strikeouts, 116 pitches. He struck 5 of the first 6 guys out in an elimination game. That's amazing.
Some say this was...
He pitched so well. I rewatched these games. It's ridiculous. It's freaking ridiculous.
Well, some say this is some of the most dominant playoff pitching these 2 games if you watch it, because he goes 8 innings, twice and shuts out and literally like
Nobody
shuts
got
down
past second base in this game. It was that ridiculous. And then in Game 7, Smoltz comes in. The Braves stake themselves a really early lead, and they're off to the World Series to play the Twins.
And this is when we see him come in to the real worst to first.
Yes, the real worst to first. Game 3, he starts on October 22nd. The game goes... Avery pitches well.
Yeah, that's what everybody says. And if you watch this, like, there weren't bad games. Just the Twins just literally just barely
pulled
squeak
something
it out.
out of their just pulled something out of their ass. He went 7 innings, 3 runs on 5 strikeouts. Alejandro Pena blew the save though for him. So the game goes 12 innings, and while the Braves eventually win 5-4 in 12, Avery doesn't get a decision. But he comes back in Game 6, which we've talked about is the Kirby Puckett game. Mm-hmm. A game which Atlanta, had they won, would have given them the World Series title. Pitches 6 innings, 3 runs, 3 strikeouts, but left the game without a decision.
Well, it's one of those things that you always think of, like, would this have changed Avery's future? You know what I mean?
Right, if he's the 21
poster.
years old, yeah. Oh, man.
Would they have then thought of cooling him off a little, or
maybe? We'll never know, but the Twins eventually win Game 7, the Smoltz-Morris game. But since they have so many starters who are in their early mid-20s, the winning doesn't stop in Atlanta, Chris.
I was going to say, they are literally set up to be the best team the next year.
Yeah, it's
in the NL, especially, not even just like their division. They're literally like
when Mac and Charlie get jobbed. The mail never stops. The mail never stops. The winning doesn't stop. So in 92, Avery leads Major League Baseball in starts, has 233.2 innings pitched this season. While he goes 11-11, 6 of the losses were by 2 runs or fewer. 3.20 ERA, 129 strikeouts. And the Braves end up winning the NL West again.
But this is what everyone was saying about this year, was his record was a bit low because the Braves offense was just like not good, but their pitching was so dominant.
Yeah.
Like you said, lost 6 of them by 2 runs, but then they run into Pirates again.
Oh, rematch 2, Electric Boogaloo.
I see it.
Listening to the Bonilla episode, you kind of know what happens, but... So he wins Game 2 in this series on October 7th, 1992. Pitches 6 1/3. Well, he gave up 4 runs. He set an NLCS 22 1/3 scoreless inning streak
Against the Pirates in the playoffs.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Because he was the MVP, NLCS
Yep.
MVP the year before, so he extends it. They win 13-5. Atlanta goes up 3-1 in this series. So you're thinking, oh, they're just going to coast. The Pirates are dead. Barry Bonds will end up leaving. But the Pirates, what they end up doing in Game 5, when they face Avery again, they shell him.
I was going to say,
absolutely shell him.
He literally is in the game for 1/3 of the inning. They score 5 runs, and they're like, all right, you're out.
You're out. We might need you if it comes to a Game 7. I hope it doesn't happen. We might need you to come out of that bullpen.
Yeah.
And it does go to a Game 7. And he pitched 1 1/3 in this game after the Pirates had an early lead, up 2-0 in the bottom of the 9th. And then Francisco Cabrera ruins everyone in Pittsburgh's baseball dreams by driving in Sid Bream to win the game 3-2 on a single.
And so they're back-to-back World Series competitors.
Competitors. That's a good way of putting it, Chris.
I know.
Competitors.
And you think about it, like looking back, could this have been a dynasty? Because they're not. You just like this little thing right here where they go back-to-back.
This is almost like the Colts with Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that part later. But they go to the World Series again. He pitches Game 3. Oddly enough, this is the first World Series game ever played across the border.
Yeah, it's the first one outside of the United States. Oh, America. And he's the first losing pitcher ever.
Well, I can't put too much fault on him for this loss because he pitched a hell of a game. This was actually an interesting game. They should have had a triple play in this game on a Devon White catch where Kelly Gruber tagged out Deion Sanders, but the ump didn't see it. But it was a total pitcher's duel. He goes 8 innings with 9 strikeouts. But in the bottom of the 9th, after giving up a single to Robbie Alomar, Mark Wallers comes in. Alomar steals second base. They eventually have to load the bases for Candy Maldonado, and he gets a walk-off hit.
It's shitty because you're right. He really did pitch a good game. Toronto, I do feel like, was a better team. You know what I mean? Where you look at that, you're like, man, Braves had great pitching. Toronto, just a better.
Yeah, it was tied 2-2. I think the only runs he allowed were home runs to, I think, Carter and Gruber in that game. So, I mean, to lose only giving up 3 runs and they walked the bases loaded after they pulled you, you're just responsible for the go-ahead. But Game 6, October 24th, 1992. Only 4 innings pitched, 2 runs, 2 strikeouts. But this is an elimination game where the bullpen is used quite extensively. I believe the game goes to, in the top of the 11th, Dave Winfield doubles, which is his first World Series extra base hit ever. Scores Alomar and White, and although the Braves have a furious comeback in the bottom of the 9th, they cannot win, and they lose their 2nd consecutive World Series.
Just not enough, and those damn Canadians take what is America's prize.
Stay on your side of the border, Snow Frogs. That's all I'm saying.
That's all he's saying. So the Blue Jays take it, and we get into 1993.
And the Braves have just said, hey, we already have an awesome pitching staff. Let's add future Hall of Famer Greg Maddux to the fold.
It is quite a bold addition because they really don't add a lot of offense.
Well, you know what's funny is the offseason prior, because they were talking about getting rid of him to get something in return so he wouldn't leave as a free agent. They had a Bonds trade executed.
That's wild.
They had a Bonds trade executed that Jim Leland said, you are not trading him there. Of all places, you're not trading him.
So he starts off red hot. That's the thing.
He's an all-star
He's
this
an
year.
all-star.
He's an all-star for the Braves. And he goes 18-6, 2.94 ERA, 35 starts again, 3 complete games, 1 shutout, 223 and a third innings pitched, Chris.
If you know what I'm saying. Some people say foreshadowing. Hit it with me.
So they struggle kind of out the gate because San Francisco's on a tear. They make a midseason trade where they sent a washing machine to San Diego for someone who should be in the Hall of Fame, Fred McGriff, who just ignited their offense. And they went on a ridiculous, and we'll get into the playoffs, and I think we've talked about it in the Schilling episode. By the end of the year, they're 104-58, and they're gassed. They're just they won the division on the last day of the year. But Avery on September 12th that year in San Diego has a muscle injury in his armpit. And while it doesn't necessarily affect him too much, it's a little foreshadowing of things that start to come during his career.
Well, and this is what everybody says is this is the indication of his literal arm rotation mechanism, whatever kind of, his arm literally almost falling apart. And because this muscle in his armpit, he ruptures it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it does not heal
properly.
Right. Yes. Yeah. Like that's literally what happened. So and that's what they were saying right after it was literally at the end of this season, it was like 2 different pitchers.
Yep.
Going into the playoffs against Curt Schilling, everybody would have probably picked Avery to dominate this. And
because Schilling is finally starting to come out of the box as like an awesome pitcher.
But still, Avery was like the all-star this year, and literally Schilling outpitches him. And that's what people were saying was just like...
And it's not like Avery pitched poorly either, because in these games, Atlanta's still in him, but Schilling is getting no decisions because the bullpen is god-awful.
Yeah.
No decision in Game 1, and no decision in Game 5. Overall, he had 13 innings, only allowed 5 runs and 10 strikeouts, and had a sub-3 ERA, which is great for anybody in postseason play. It's just Schilling was that dominant, and that the Phillies had to rally in both of those games in extra innings or at the very end to pull it out. One stat I wanted to bring up, as we were alluding to, because 1994 is his age 24 season, he made 135 starts before age 24. That's a lot.
Crazy.
There are guys who don't get that. Your average pitcher now, what is maybe 30 to 32 starts a season.
And I was trying to look this up. I couldn't find it. But what was his average pitch count per start?
Oh,
because I bet it was in the high 80s.
Judging by the innings pitched that they have, or that is statistically recorded, and his shutouts and his complete games, it's a lot.
Maybe even 100. He had to have literally pitched so much more than guys do nowadays. But this is what I mean.
He had talked about even as a kid,
Yeah.
during summer ball, he would throw like 300 pitches.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't even care. And it's a much different game now. If someone was using a pitcher like that now, specifically a young and talented one like Avery, baseball people would be losing their minds.
Yes, because, I mean, he really is this lesson that everybody learned, like, oh, we burnt that out.
Yeah. 94 was kind of a difficult season for him off the field, probably more so than on the field. His father-in-law died March 29th of that year, and then his son Evan was born 3 months premature. So he was basically commuting back and forth from Atlanta and Michigan and all around the country playing baseball just to be with his family.
Yeah, and he was just dealing with mental stuff, and yeah.
And Smoltz was basically like, you could tell it was affecting him
Oh, yeah,
a lot.
absolutely.
He went 8-3 though in 24 starts. His ERA starts to climb though. He's at 4.04 in 151.2 innings pitched. But the reason that number is so low is because baseball went on fucking strike that year.
Yep.
Greedy bastards.
God damn it.
Ownership, not the players. So in 1995, now they're ready to just start dominating, and that's exactly what they did this season. Unfortunately for Avery, this is when the downfall begins to happen as far as the regular season goes. They're still loaded, but he goes 7-13 with a 4.67 ERA and 29 starts. He's even said about this season, I stunk. But when you have Maddox, Smoltz, and Glavine in your rotation, it doesn't matter. I think that was the year Maddox had a sub-2 ERA. That's how dominant he was.
Well, and it's one of those things where I bet people in his camp were like, well, maybe he needs a change of scenery, and it will, revitalize his career, because he was still looked at as like this guy, but if you watched his pitching, it really started to decline.
Yeah, the Braves went to only a 3-man rotation in the NLDS against the Rockies, made only one appearance. And then in Game 1 against the Reds, he walked the only guy he faced in the 11th inning in Game 1. And then Bobby Cox makes an interesting decision in Game 4 because Atlanta's up 3-0 in the series. Doesn't want to use one of his main starters in the game, so he gets Avery to pitch and start Game 4. And mind you, it was a very unpopular decision. People were going, why are you doing that? Just close out the series. Don't give him life.
It was literally like one of those decisions where people were just like, this, he's either going to be looked at as a genius or he might be fired for this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it looked like. He didn't pitch the postseason more than an inning, and he was just like, all right, here's the ball for Game 4.
Close us out. And
Yeah.
Avery had said it meant a lot to him when Cox said to him before the game, Ave, I've got confidence in you. And the decision fucking worked.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. He went 6 innings, 3 hits, 1 run, 3 strikeouts. They win the game and go to the World Series. And, so that was the World Series game. He started Game 4 against the Reds. That was the stats from in the World Series. He asked him to pitch Game 4 again because they were up 2-1 in the series against Cleveland.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So he said, Abe, I've got confidence in you. And they eventually win that in 6 games. So he's a World Series champion, Chris. He's a World Series champion. That's amazing.
Especially because going into this playoffs, you're right, they went to a 3-man rotation, and I heard him say this. He just goes, I didn't think I was going to play in that playoffs.
Yeah,
not play, but not start.
The NLCS, 6 innings pitched, 6 strikeouts against the Reds in a game no one wanted him to start. In the World Series, 6 innings pitched, 3 strikeouts, 1 run in a game nobody wanted him to pitch. It was like almost a redemption for 91 and 92 for him.
They said it.
As the postseason.
It looked like the pitcher of old. And that was kind of the thought was, will he revitalize his career with this? That's why I was saying was, will he get this, change of setting and be this dominant pitcher again? But it's got to feel good to be on that Braves team, to be these young guys that kept going back.
Yeah.
And then to win this.
Oh, totally. No, for everyone like losing to Minnesota and Toronto and then losing to Philadelphia and that awesome team that they had. Oh, they are my favorite non-Padre team of all time, the 93 Phillies. But, so 96, you're thinking everything's coming up Millhouse, and it does not for Avery. He's losing velocity on his fastball now, and the injuries and inconsistencies picking up for him.
Well, he's 25, but I feel like
he's 26, but he's 26. A hard 26.
I was just going to say, so he's 26, but I feel like his body's like 36. That's what the thing is with all of these pitches and all of this, work. It really burnt him out.
But and that's why I always say like pitch counts are more of a person-to-person type thing as opposed to like an across-the-board flat type of deal, because Smoltz didn't have any problems with his arm until he was in his mid to late 30s.
And he never pitched over 90 miles an hour in his entire career.
No, that was Maddox.
Oh, that was Maddox.
Smoltz was straight gas.
Yeah, he was.
And then,
which is that you're right. That is weird as fuck.
And Glavine too. That guy won 300 freaking games in Major League Baseball.
I wonder if it was the increased pitch count when he was younger and just the not drop off whatsoever.
Yeah,
so
that might be it.
It could have been anything. It could have been his body. It could have been it. Literally. Yeah, it could have.
That's one of the biggest mysteries, because, like, if you told me in 1991 who the Braves' best starter was after that NLCS and even World Series, it'd be like Steve Avery.
Oh yeah,
unquestionably.
And he was. That was what we were saying. Was he was looked at as like the franchise guy, but looking back, he's kind of the forgotten child.
Yeah. So he goes 7-10 in 23 starts, 4.47 ERA. Doesn't even pitch in the NLDS against the Dodgers. In the NLCS in 2 games, had 2 innings pitched, 2 hits and a strikeout. But they scratch and claw their way back from a 3-2 series deficit against the Cardinals to go back to the World Series and play the New York Yankees. Fuck the Yankees. I'm sorry. But
well, this is because, again, it was kind of like the last year where he wasn't playing in the postseason. He really didn't play whatsoever. And then going into this Yankees, he was kind of slotted in for one or two occasion. Was it 2?
Well,
I know
the
one
most
of them.
important one was in Game 4,
yes,
where they're up 6-0. The Yankees eventually tie the game because of Jim Lehrett's DUI king and his home run heroics. In the 10th inning, Avery comes in, gives up a single. And then there are 3 walks that come after it, the last of which to our main man, Boggsy.
Well, one, so he intentionally walks the guy right before Boggs, which everybody said was a mistake. This was something I found so interesting because it was said that was a mistake by the manager, but he was saying, I have confidence in Avery.
Which he did in the World Series, and he did in the NLD or NLCS.
And Avery proceeds to walk Boggsy for the loss. And that's the thing that people were saying was it really was.
I mean, I know you want to go lefty-lefty, especially at this time, but when you have a guy like Wade Boggs, that matchup doesn't always favor the pitcher.
That's and that's what people were saying was it didn't make sense with Boggs coming up, and he's going to ride that horse.
Yes, he is. What are you doing, Boggsy? So January 97, he's a free agent now, and he's thinking now it's time for a change of scenery.
Okay.
And the Boston Red Sox have just hired Braves third base coach Jimmy Williams as their manager, and they decide to sign him and bring him in for some pitching help there in Boston because Roger Clemens had just left.
Oh, okay.
Was thinking about making some bodily changes after he left Boston.
Left Boston, left his old persona.
Well, he was always an asshole.
That's true.
He left his training regimen in Boston. 22 games, 18 starts, 6-7, with a 6.42 ERA. Only throws less than 100 innings that year, 96.2. The injuries again limited him. This is when his body starts just failing him, which is really sad.
Because he really is young
He's 27 years old.
He's
pitched in how many postseasons?
This should be going into his prime, and I feel like everybody in baseball can kind of see what's happening.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, the word is kind of out that the arm trouble is and the shoulder trouble is just there. 98 goes 10-7, 5.02 ERA, 57 strikeouts, but the team leaves him off the postseason roster. He's cut and released in October. So doesn't have a job, but in 99, after December 98, he signs with the Reds. And 99 Reds, they won over 90 games. They had the play-in game for the wild card, which they lost. But they were a good team. But he goes 6-7, 5.16 ERA, only 51 strikeouts. And in July, he tears his left labrum in his shoulder, which is, that's like breaking your leg if you're a horse, essentially.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's so rough to come back from. Does he go to the worst Detroit Tigers team ever?
Well, no. In between, the Braves tried to bring him back in January 2000.
Oh, yeah. All right.
But doesn't make the team, goes to the minors, and then goes to the tries out with them again in the spring of 2001, but wasn't healthy enough to make the team. It just wasn't healthy enough to make the team. Even the Braves scouting director had said they tried to get him back as a pitching coach in the minors because obviously I think he'd be pretty good considering, who his dad was and the types of
I was going to say he grew up
with.
In baseball. He knows it.
But he wanted to spend time with his family.
Yeah, I saw that. That was great.
In late 2002, though, since his oldest son had never seen him pitch, he signs a minor league contract to come to spring training with the Detroit Tigers.
Yeah.
Which for him is awesome because, and even Smoltz has talked about this, how he always wished he could have played for because he's from the Detroit area as well, how he could always play for his hometown team. He said he felt bad for Glavine when Smoltz was finishing his career at the Red Sox because Glavine's from Massachusetts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I saw that the Tigers were so bad that year.
They were 62 Mets shitty this year.
Yes.
They almost set the losses record.
And that's what somebody said it was this great thing where he was just like, can I please come and play for your minor league team? And they literally were like, yeah, I mean, we're the worst team in baseball.
I mean, we're tanking.
That's really what it was, which that's why I love, because you're right. He came back to play for his boyhood team.
Yeah, went 2-0, 5.63 ERA, 16 innings pitched for a 43-119, a cool 43-119 Tigers team. So, yeah, after that, his career is essentially over at 33, unfortunately. But wanted to bring this up. One-time All-Star, NLCS MVP in 91, World Series winner in 95, 96 and 83, 4.19 ERA in 261 starts, 1,554.2 innings pitched, 980 strikeouts. In the postseason, went 5-3 with a 2.90 ERA, with 12 starts and 77.2 innings pitched. That's amazing. Because he did that all in one
little
window.
block, yeah.
One block.
Almost.
For any pitcher, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And that ERA number for his career, so high because of all the shit that happened post-1995. Or you could make the argument everything that happened post-1993, which is not, even as a hitter. He hit 174. That's amazing.
Yeah. World Series champion.
He hit 4 dingers. He hit 4 dingers as a pitcher. That's amazing.
You got to know those dingers came off fastballs. That's just
14 doubles, 4 triples. Not even Frank Thomas hit 4 triples.
Well, he couldn't get around the bases.
Taylor Sports Hall of Fame 2004 and his John F. Kennedy High School baseball and softball stadiums have his name. And in 2020 was the account executive group for the Braves hospitality team. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But I think the main thing, though, I wanted to bring up is for that fucking shooting star, right? He was just the man, and it never quite panned out.
Well, I feel like what was going on in that 91 to 93 was just kind of like, oh, this guy could be a Hall of Famer. And it dropped off so quick that people were like, and that was the other thing, was the Braves pitching was so famous.
You forgot about him.
Yes. That he was just like, who was that? even in 91, 92, 93, you were like, oh, that's the guy, which that's why, I mean, some guys literally have this like burn too hot because consistency really kind of wins out.
Yep, it's true. But thank you, everybody. Steve Avery.